Zach Pryor, and these are the Coastal Chronicles. In January 1865, Colonel William Lamb and his undermanned garrison braced for round two of the showdown between Admiral David Porter's Union fleet and General Alfred Terry's Yankee infantry. At stake was the fate of Fort Fisher and, by extension, the entire Confederacy. Fort Fisher was the sentinel that guarded the last open port of the Confederacy. Its fate, and that of the port at Wilmington, would in turn determine the fate of General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Terry would command the same soldiers who had landed for the aborted first attack, including General Adelbert Ames's division of the 24th Army Corps and General Charles Payne's two brigades of U.S. colored troops, as well as units of Terry's old brigade. Counting artillery and support, the Federals would field a force of 9,600 men against Lamb and his defenders. A week into the new year of 1865, General Alfred Terry's Union infantry had hooked up with Admiral David Porter's 58-ship invasion fleet at Beaufort, North Carolina, and by January 12th, the dark shapes of Union warships once again dotted the horizons of Fort Fisher. As Colonel Lamb watched the twinkling running lights of the Federal fleet, he dispatched an urgent telegram to General Braxton Bragg in Wilmington, pleading for reinforcements. Bragg, who had replaced General W.H.C. Whiting as commander of the Wilmington District, had pulled General Robert Hoke's 6,400 infantrymen away from Fort Fisher after the first attack in order to throw a celebratory parade for the town's citizens. Now Lamb's telegram threw Bragg's headquarters into a flurry of confusion as he tried to recall Hoke's veteran soldiers and get them back to where they were needed, 20 miles to the south. While Bragg scrambled, Colonel Lamb and his men, who never numbered more than 1,900 during the entire second attack, did what they could to get ready for what was to come. Woefully outnumbered, facing an enemy fleet whose 600 cannons were all being aimed at Fort Fisher, Lamb was left on his own to defend over a mile of sea-face earthworks. The bad news got even worse when that afternoon General Whiting joined the garrison at Fort Fisher with the news that Bragg had already made plans to evacuate the city. Fort Fisher would get no help from Wilmington. 200 men were killed or wounded in the onslaught, a storm of steel so heavy that Lamb and his men were forced to remain inside their bomb-proofs. They couldn't even come outside to cook their meals, much less man their guns or bury their dead. Repeated calls to General Bragg in Wilmington for reinforcements went unanswered. It was cold as the sun peeked over the horizon on January 15th, and the seas had calmed to a glassy surface perfect for naval gunfire. Porter's gunners took advantage of the lull and the calm seas to increase the pounding of the fort's defenses. According to one witness, the shells exploded faster than the ticking of a clock. In the fort, Lamb's men were hungry, tired, and demoralized. None of them could understand why reinforcements from Hoke and Bragg had not arrived. For 50 hours they had huddled in their bomb-proofs as the Union rounds fell on their heads, and they were feeling every minute of it. Even the one small ray of hope that came the Confederates' way, a force of roughly 1,000 South Carolina troops who landed at Battery Buchanan on the southern tip of the peninsula in an effort to join Lamb and his men, was quashed when observant Yankee gunners unleashed a rain of fire on the reinforcers. Only 350 men had made it ashore when the Federal bombardment forced the remainder to retreat, and the ones ashore to run for their lives across a 2-mile no-man's land of Union shot to reach the dubious safety of Lamb's bomb-proofs. A short time later, at 3:25 p.m., the Union ground forces attacked. On the east, sailors and Marines armed for the most part with only pistols and cutlasses advanced on the northeast bastion. Their target was the corner of the fort where the land face met the sea face, and where guns from both faces could be brought to bear by the Confederates. When the naval gunfire shifted to allow the ground assault to begin, Lamb's men raced for their guns. For more than 2 days, they had been forced to swallow Yankee lead. Now was the time for some payback. Porter's landing force suddenly found itself the target of hundreds of rebel guns. Cannons belched flame, and hundreds of muskets sparked an angry challenge to the Union interlopers advancing up the beach. Colonel Lamb himself directed fire from the northeast bastion, and soon the naval contingent of the attack force was pinned down below the high water mark of the fire-swept beach. While the Southerners' attentions were focused on the attack to the east, Terry's column rose up and began its assault on the river side of the fort at Shepherd's Battery. When Lamb and Whiting realized that Union troops had secured a foothold on the river side of the fort, they quickly shifted defenders to meet the new threat. In a matter of moments, the fighting turned into hand-to-hand combat as soldiers in blue and gray used rifle butts and bayonets more than gunpowder and lead balls to decide who would carry the day. For more than 5 hours they fought, officers and enlisted. The gate leading onto River Road that led to Wilmington earned its new name, Bloody Gate. The casualties for both sides were terrible. Rank didn't protect anyone from the horrors of close combat either. General Whiting was shot twice while fighting with a Union flag bearer near Shepherd's Battery and would die of his wound 2 months later at a federal prisoner of war camp in New York. On the Union side, General Lewis Bell, who commanded one of Terry's Army brigades, was killed and his other 2 unit leaders were severely wounded in the fight. A Pennsylvania bluecoat described the carnage and desperation of the battle afterwards. Every part of the fort was piled up, some 2 places deep, with the dead and the dying of both parties. Every charge was death or surrender. It was too much, even for demons. All told, 1,900 men died at the Second Battle of Fort Fisher. 1,400 on the Union side, 500 Confederates. 1,400 of Fort Fisher's defenders, including Colonel Lamb and General Whiting, were sent to sit out the rest of the war in Union POW camps. While Terry's army marched towards their ultimate goal of Wilmington, Admiral Porter dispersed his fleet with the exception of a small portion he kept on hand to support the Army's push north. By the end of February, Fort Fisher was no more, and the last hope of the Confederacy was dashed. The Union controlled Wilmington. I'm Jack Fryer, and this has been the Coastal Chronicles. Thanks for joining us.